they decided, well, we need to have our grievances heard. And they decided to march to the wealthy neighborhood where Jenny Durkin lives and bring their grievances to her house. And the organizers of that rally, they said, and encouraging if our legislation many times speak at that. Now that rally, of course, is one of the recall charges. Unfortunately, one of the of that rally, she couldn't be here today. Those of you who the cousin murdered her own home children and has no justice. Like I said, Katrina was not able to be here, but she did give a written statement, which Alvin is going to read for us.
Recall campaign is fundamentally for our community. It led a Black Lives Matter house to organize and kill the Seattle Police Department. City council member rally spoke powerfully. Lyles was, and my family is not receive any justice nor the recall.
In Charlene Lyle's name, I houses is Jenny. Anyone who was there heard the leader say, "We do not know." To her door, drove across 5 lanes of traffic to make against. So when throwing out the recall, last balls just a few months earlier. Why do they do this? Why? Because Kshama Sawant is incredibly effective at what she does. The billionaires know. Now they're dirty this time. In 2019, Amazon threw in $1.5 million to try to defeat Sawant and another group of progressives. They're going to hide their hand this time. Try to be more. We can still nail them. Jeff Bezos is stepping down as CEO. Andy Jassy, the new CEO, the one opponent, Ryan in 2019. Yes. Companies are going hard. Chesapeake and trying to here in Seattle, they're trying to. So we keep trying. We will beat this recall. Again, we'll fight for to corporate power because that's how. Beat this recall. Beat this. Want to add, the Democratic Party opposes the recall.
That's right.
I'm a member of DSA, Seattle DSA, right? We are building a movement across the city, unity in support of Kshama Sawant
right.
against corporate power. And help. Who's with us? Thank you.
All right, guys. Beat back. Beep, beep. All right, next up we have Jeff Stewart. We're going to read a statement by David Parsons, who is the president of the UAW Local 41, the union representing over 6,000 workers at the University of Washington.
Everyone, can you hear me okay? Yeah, Samsai Stewart with 4121, the union. The first time I play that in order against the central administration, and they had no plans to address rising housing costs for workers. When we proposed having our insurance cover gender-affirming care, one of their bargaining team members said society isn't there yet. This institution child care for $1 multi-billion. And I was right back or which inspire action and organize and fight in victories for our community. And that's because Kshama constantly shows and helps build movements. She's on our picket lines. She joins organizing against corporate landlords. She supports struggles for justice and police. Contract. We're hearing the same stuff we always do. There's no money. We can't give you wage increases. Despite doesn't exist in a vacuum, so we can't stop there. We got to fight for political change as well. We need to continue winning victories for tenants, like the right to counsel legislation that Kshama led the way on earlier this week. We need community control of the police. We need a Green New Deal. And on the whole, we need a working class, movement-based alternative to corporate, business as usual politics. And we need Kshama in office to help us build that. So defending Kshama's city council seat, that's a real priority for the Seattle labor movement. I'm proud to be here today as a leader in one of the dozen unions that's already endorsed the Solidarity Campaign, a union that's donated to it, and a union that's actively helping build the fight against this racist right-wing recall attempt. And just to wrap up, I'm going to share a statement from our union's president, David Parsons, who couldn't be here today but wanted to express his support. David says, "I'm sending my solidarity in this fight to support Kshama against the right-wing effort to recall her. This is a fight we must win. UAW has pledged our support, both through our local 4121 here in Washington and through our Western States Community Action Council, because we recognize the local and national significance of this campaign. We know that the organizing work Kshama and her team do every day for working people, that helps set standards in and out of Seattle. Our members, students, and other academic workers locally, but also writers, auto and aerospace industry workers, we need affordable housing funded by taxing big business. We need environmental justice, and we need bold, unflinching champions like Kshama to fight white supremacy and xenophobia. Kshama's effectiveness at winning and improving conditions for working people is fueling the recall. We take this campaign for granted at our peril. Anything short of an all-out push to protect Kshama is going to embolden the forces who wish to distract from her record and weaken our movement. So we look forward as a union to fighting and winning together with you all during this critical year of recovery and growth. So thank you, David, for those words of support. And I think finally it's worth when we go out there and start talking to voters in the district, to keep in the back of our minds the union slogan, an injury to one is an injury to all. An injury to one, an injury to all. An injury to one, an injury to all. Thank you all. That's why we got to go all out to defend our union sister, Kshama. Solidarity.
Next up, we have Chicago Alderman, the equivalent of a city councilor, and a fighting DSA member who stood against austerity, and at a moment's notice, decided to come out here and fly out here and speak at our rally, because that's what solidarity looks like. So, join me in welcoming Brian Lopez.
Thank you. My name is Byron Sicho Lopez, Alderman and Council Member of the City of Chicago in the 25th Ward, a proud DSA member, and of course, proud to also have had the support of Socialist Alternative to win a critical race in the City of Chicago. When our comrade Kshama called, and of course, we have seen her role in the national politics in this moment in history. And when we see injustice anywhere, we understand that that's injustice everywhere. And that's why we did not hesitate to be here with you. This is a moment of solidarity, but it's also a moment to organize and fight back against oligarchs, billionaires, and corporations that want to impose their will in a time where our working class communities across the country are suffering and have been suffering, not only for this pandemic, but the atrocities committed by these billionaires and oligarchs who want to continue to rule with an iron fist when we continue to lead the way with humanity and responsible policies. That's what socialism is for us. We put people over profit. Now, I think it's very clear, and I think many speakers have spoke about why this is such an important fight, not only here in Seattle, but across the country. But when we see billionaires and corporations imposing their will attacking democracy, attacking working class people. We have to dissect what that means for us in a national scale. We have to understand what Kshama has done in a time when there was no leadership, when a time where people were suffering. We saw Kshama taking the lead for the fight for 15, that now is a national fight. We have seen Kshama fighting for Black Lives Matter, against police brutality. We've seen Kshama, of course, and to the complaint and screaming of Mr. Bezos and Amazon. Seattle was the first city to tax Amazon. Now we're going to fight to tax it in Chicago too. The fight for housing as a human right. The fight for a right to counsel is also a national fight. When we see developers, just look around. Developers who continue to push their own agenda for profit, when we have thousands of units vacant. We see the homelessness in our communities taking more and more of our streets. The need for mental health. The need for housing as a human right. The matter for affordable housing. This is a fight that also Kshama have championed, and we are fighting for the same fight now in Chicago. So why is it important to be here in solidarity? And I know you don't see the socialist movement in Chicago, but it's in the rise. There are many who are not here with you today, but I tell you, I'm here proud to be here on their behalf in full support of Kshama and the socialist movement in Seattle and everywhere. So when we see the long list of things that Kshama is being accused of, I see a champion of the people, a champion of working class people in Seattle who's paving the way for many others in other cities to continue to fight. Why? That's why Kshama has become a dangerous figure in the national sphere. The attack is not a coincidence, but it's certainly an unprecedented and dangerous attack. And I will have to mention here, and as socialists, we should know this. While Rosa Luxemburg warned us, this is decades ago, on the rise of fascism, the rise of white supremacy and Nazis that are a real threat today in our country. This is why this fight is so important and it's so critical for us to be in solidarity. We did not hesitate to be here on a minute to be in solidarity. That's how important this fight here, and we cannot afford to lose. It is important to mention that it's despicable the use of the judicial system, the Supreme Court, that has ruled against Kshama for the only crime of standing up for working class communities, unequivocally, unapologetically, and consistently during her time in City Council. We have seen that across the board. But it has also become very concerning for all of us that it is apparently okay and constitutional to tear gas communities and terrorize communities by the own mayor of the city of Seattle. But it is apparently unconstitutional to stand for working class people. That is what's happening right now, and we have to be very clear. We need to make sure that we understand this attack on working class people is a very dangerous precedent that today is in Seattle and tomorrow will be affecting other communities. We've seen this, and I hope that you also read about what's going on in New York, where an environmental lawyer who beat Chevron on their atrocious pollution and atrocious acts against nature and humanity in Ecuador, when they destroyed the whole Amazon region, causing thousands of deaths, cancer rates, and desolation in a poor country. The same corporation who lost in international courts is now again using the judicial system here in the US to persecute these environmental activists and attorney. And now they're having in 600, this is the 600th day of house arrest for again, taking a position to support the working people here in the US, but also across the country. That's why there's no one else who exemplifies the international proletarian revolution, as a brother Fred Hampton has said, as a sister Kshama Sawant. That is why it's so important that we start connecting the dots. So when billionaires, corporations, and oligarchs have no recourse but to use the judicial system, but to lie, to deceive the public, it is important that we rise up. It is important that we organize. So let me tell you what's happening briefly in the city of Chicago and why this fight is so important. We cannot afford to lose. I just saw in a really interesting press conference about the puppet of Mr. Bezos accusing Comrade Kshama, and the reason why they thought it was so important is because they're tired of living in fear. So let me respond to that and let me show you what fear looks like. In the city of Chicago, 2 days ago, a 13-year-old boy was killed by Chicago Police Department. A 13-year-old boy was killed. Adam Toledo. The mother was not even informed of the killing for over 48 hours. And we're still waiting to see the videos of that atrocity. We also saw how the mayor of Chicago, Mayor Lightfoot, tried to cover up an illegal raid on a black social worker in the city of Chicago that was terrorized and naked by the Chicago Police Department. We see they cover up Laquan McDonald. We have seen in the city of Chicago 750 murders. 750 murders last year. Over 1,500 carjackings. Many of them, unfortunately, affecting minors, Black and Latino kids. But we don't see that in the news. We don't see the Supreme Court taking on these atrocities. But they will take on a minute for someone who's actually trying to push back and had the courage to stand up to Mr. Bezos. Jeff Bezos, the richest man on earth, who is trying to avoid taxes, who continues to stop the unionization of workers in Alabama, in Chicago, and across the country. And that's right, and fuck Jeff Bezos. So this is why this fight is so important for all of us, because we do live in a state of fear. But they have already taken everything from us, including our fear. So this is the time to organize, brothers and sisters. This is the time we rise, and we gotta rise, because the alternative is fascism.
That's right.
The alternative is barbarism. And we know that there's only one alternative to barbarism, and that is socialism. And that's why our sister Kshama is an important leader in this movement, and we have to have her back. There's something that we cannot compromise, and we're not going to compromise on human rights.
No.
We're not going to compromise on human rights.
No.
And for everyone out there who does not understand that this is a human rights violation, for anybody who's out there, because in the middle of a pandemic, one of our communities are fighting for their lives to attack our democracy, in a time like this, on an elected official who stood up firm and courageously with our working class people, not only here in Seattle, but across the country. That is what paves the way to fascism.
That's right.
So for us to sit on the sidelines and watch is not an option.
No.
We need to organize, brothers and sisters. We have to organize block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, community by community. Because the state of fear, the atrocities committed across communities, poor communities across the country, are not sustainable, are immoral, they're wrong, and are sustainable. We gotta rise to the occasion and provide the clarity the courage of the moment.
That's right.
We must organize. Today is a rally. Today is a time that we're going to continue to work to spread the word about what is at stake here. Because if we continue to allow billionaires and corporations and oligarchs that have governed for way too long to take over government, that have already kidnapped government, our communities will suffer.
That's right.
They have been suffering. Over 500,000 people have died in this pandemic. In Chicago alone, and you've seen this in Seattle, how displacement has taken a huge toll on poor people. In Chicago, and nobody covers that, and we got to remember this, what Malcolm X said. Be careful with the corporate media, because they'll get you hating the oppressed and praising the oppressor. And that's what's happening here. Very clearly. 363,000 Black residents have left the city of Chicago in the last 2 decades. That's more than the population of Atlanta combined. That's the attack on a Black community. A 13-year-old boy killed by the Chicago Police Department. A mother has not even informed. Where's the morality in all this? We just heard the many cases of police brutality here in Seattle. That's barbarism. And the rise of fascism that is paid for those who are complicit in this. My call to all the working class people in Seattle, across the country. This is a fight that we cannot afford to lose. Our commitment today and every day to fight for justice and to make sure that we have courageous leaders, Kshama, who are fighting for all of us. All of us. Today, let's make a commitment to fight until we win. And I tell you, we will prevail. We will win. Sister Kshama, I know that we talked briefly about this, but I think this is a time that is an unprecedented time. We got to talk about what's happening in our communities, the real issues in our communities. This is nothing but a distraction and an attack on those who are actually speaking truth to power, while others are silent, or they want to meet us halfway, or they want to compromise on human rights. We have a comrade and a sister in the struggle who has a proven record of why we need a council member like Kshama in the Seattle City Council. Let's make sure that we have many more terms, many more times, because we need it. I tell you, when we see today kids in cages, today there's still kids in cages. Today there's racism, there's white supremacy. Trump is gone. Those issues are still here. And they'll come back if we fail. We cannot afford to fail. Our commitment to a movement that is much larger than an elected official. This is a movement for socialism everywhere. This is a fight for our lives. This is going to be socialism or barbarism. And we know, brothers and sisters, we're going to choose socialism because we know that socialism is bringing humanity to our politics. It's bringing the humanity in all of us. When others dehumanize us, we have a sister who has humanized us. Who have fought for immigrants. Who's fighting for Black Lives Matter. Who's fighting for human rights, for housing as a human right. Who's fighting to tax the rich. I'm sure as hell. We're going to say one thing to Mr. Bezos. We're going to tax in Chicago. We're going to tax in Alabama. We're going to unionize our workers. And we're going to bring socialism everywhere because it's a brother. Thank you, Sister Kshama. Thank you for fighting with us. We have your back. We're with you. Thank you. Sister brother.
Give it up for Brother Reverend Lopez. So I think Byron brought up a very important point, which is that solidarity is a verb. How many here today have done a shift, whether organize in the Kshama Solidarity campaign or one of Kshama's election campaigns or in the fight to tax Amazon or the fight to 15 has tabled, phone banks. That's right. So today we are here to hear, what is our political response to this egregious attack. We are also seizing the moment to talk to our neighbors in the community. We're going to go out and table after this rally because we want to make sure that our neighbors hear from us before they hear from the Seattle Times, before they hear from King 5, right? Because all of those outlets are going to say, the Supreme Court says that Kshama's broke the law. But we know that that's not true, right? We know that we have an undemocratic recall system here in Washington where you're not even required to prove that your charges are true.
That's right.
And we're not going to let that undemocratic attack stand. So if you have not yet, please do sign in at the sign-in table so that we can make sure that we talk to as many of our neighbors. And if not today, sometime this week, right? There can be phone banking, there can be tabling, there's postering. There are so many ways to be involved because solidarity is a verb. And I know that our next speaker knows very well that solidarity is a verb because there is not a single struggle I can think of where I haven't been proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. And I know he's been in the struggle for longer than I have even. And it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Reverend Jeffries from New Hope Missionary Baptist Church to you today.
Okay, I had a speech, but we don't have a podium, so I'm just going to speak from my heart. When I first heard about the recall, I didn't really feel that the city of Seattle was still in the same place that it was when I first came. But having seen and having witnessed their incessant and continuous push against a freedom fighter like Councilwoman Sawant, I understand that this city is committed to a status quo of oppression of the poor. It's committed to building wealth and creating a city where wealthy people feel safe, the poor are driven out or thrown crumbs. The charges against Councilwoman Sawant are political, is an example of political malfeasance. This is not, these charges are political. They are systemic, they are evidence of a systemic problem. Evidence of the control and manipulation of everything that goes on in this city by the white business community. Their only interest is to make money.
That's right.
Their only interest is to build a white citadel on a hill. Their so-called Emerald City that buries the poor, marginalizes the voices of justice, and destroys any effort to create fairness and fair play.
That's right. That's right.
This city must change.
Yes.
This city is a microcosmic example of what this country is all about. It's hidden away in the Pacific Northwest, doing its business the way it wants to do its business, with little or no scrutiny. The enemies in our city today are many, but one of them is not Kshama Sawant.
No.
The enemies in our city begins with poverty. It begins with the fact that African American people are making less collectively today than they were 20 years ago in the city of Seattle. It begins with the wholesale removal of the middle class from Seattle. It begins with a mindset that we can do whatever we want to do, whenever we want to do it. It is an isolationist mindset. It is a mindset that sets a standard for the rest of the country. It has to stop. And it must stop with warriors, with people who have made up minds like Kshama Sawant. I'm here to say it stops now. I'm here to say that we will gather together and support her right now. I'm here to say that we will rally around the cause that she lifts up right now. I'm here to say that we are tired, sick and tired of being treated in the way that corporate Seattle thinks they can get away with treating anybody who raises up and says they're tired of being treated like dogs and treated like people who don't have rights. So right now is the time for us to come together. Blacks, whites, all of us must come together to deal with this situation now. I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like to have your church burned down. I know what it feels like to have your name put in the mud. I know what it feels like to have an ideal to help your people and have your own people marginalized and split against you. I know what it feels like to stand up for justice and have the Seattle Times come against you. I know what it feels like to have a church that's burned down and have to wait 4 years to get a permit to get it rebuilt. I know what it feels like to come in here with ideals into this city and then be lambasted by people who only desire is to keep their wealth, keep their privilege, keep their power, keep their so-called city on a hill the exact way they was 40, 50 years ago. But I've come to tell them right now, justice will not wait. Justice will not wait. We will not wait. We will not wait. You can burn our churches down. You can try to expel our council people, but we will rally. We will rally again and again. We will not stop. We will not stop. I will not stop. Justice will not stop. Let us resolve to engage in this noble struggle. I came here over 35 years ago with great expectations. I've heard a lot about the liberal city of Seattle, and I came here to help my people. I have not done any crimes. I have not committed any felonies, but I've been stopped by the police over 50 times. This has to end. Freedom has to begin someplace in this country.
That's right.
Real justice has to begin someplace in this country.
That's right.
We have the people here. We have the ingredients here. And those that which we don't have, we will bring in.
That's right.
But we will fight. I'm willing to fight. I'm here to fight. Until justice comes down, I'm here to fight. I'm here to fight for the poor. I'm here to fight for the marginalized. I'm here to fight against the rule of money and oppression that is killing black people, killing our children, killing our city. This could be a great city.
That's right.
But money has to get out of the way.
That's right.
Fairness has to take its place. How much money do you need? How much wealth do you need?
That's
How
right.
much power do you need?
That's right.
Time has come for us to stand up. Stand with Kshama. Stand with Kshama. Stand and fight. It's not going to be easy, but fight. 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 Fight.
been mentioned today by a number of the speakers about the heroic struggle that Amazon workers down in Bessemer, Alabama are engaging in as they're fighting to win their first ever union. And here in Seattle, workers for Uber and Lyft have also fought against these giant corporate interests, and they have won their own union. So please join me in welcoming Jake Laundrie of the Drivers Union.
Thank you. My name's Jake Laundrie. I'm a Seattle-based musician, a proud rank-and-file worker in IATSE 15, the Stagehands Union, and I'm a rank-and-file member of Drivers Union with Teamsters 117, one of the first unions on planet Earth to represent Uber and Lyft drivers. In our union organizing with gig workers fighting for our basic working rights and living wages, Councilmember Kshama Sawant has been our fiercest political champion and ally in City Hall. For years, she has used her platform as a Seattle lawmaker to speak out about the dangerous, racist, and sub-minimum wage exploitation of working-class tech workers like us. And she has been a relentless advocate and change maker for our union's organizing and political efforts. Kshama Sawant was indispensable in our union's efforts to be one of the first cities in the world to allow gig workers to collectively bargain and organize. And as a result of this, she helped us win sick pay just this last year. And she was also instrumental in our union organizing to create and pass the Fair Share Law for Uber and Lyft drivers, which also passed just this last year. And it gave Uber and Lyft drivers a 40% raise, ensuring that no Seattle driver makes less than $15 an hour. And as you all know, Kshama also led the movement of thousands of union members and activists to make Seattle the first major city in the country to pass a $15 minimum wage several years ago. And I have to say, from a personal standpoint, it's awesome to be speaking here near Seattle Central College I attended when Kshama was teaching there and leading the Occupy protests there in the 2010s. Who else here has been looking up to her since then?
Yeah.
Yes. She has been a progressive trailblazer from the start. And for that reason, Kshama Sawant is now facing a totally undemocratic, right-wing, and billionaire-backed recall of her re-election to City Council in 2018. This blatant attempt to undo the will of the people in Seattle who re-elected her in 2018 just advanced in the Washington State Supreme Court. Why? Because Kshama Sawant has been unapologetic in supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. The corporations and dark money funding the recall aim to paint Kshama as and the Black Lives Matter movement as dangerous. This is an insult to the millions of working people, including many of our union's members and people in the audience today who have peacefully taken to the streets for years to protest racism and police brutality. So this is a racist and sexist recall campaign that is trying to scapegoat Kshama, a powerful and outspoken woman of color, for all she has done to help the livelihoods of working people like us. We have to fight it. Since Kshama has fought so hard for years for a Seattle that not just survives but thrives, she's fought for our better pay, our better living and working conditions. I think we all owe it to her to lend our names and politics in support of her fight against this anti-democratic recall. So sign those petitions, table and phone bank, and organize in her district. Talk to your unions about endorsing this campaign and donating to the cause. Because when we fight, we win! When we fight, we win! Solidarity. Hit the mic. Don, one of our fellow drivers and organizers, Don Curry, wants to mention something too.
I just want to add something here about Kshama, what I admire in Kshama. Right now, drivers in Seattle are enjoying a 40% increase in pay, and soon legal protection against unfair deactivations. There's a very specific reason why we have won this, and we will continue to have these rights, whereas in California, drivers lost those. Years ago, we followed Kshama Sawant's advice. We abandoned any notion of becoming employees, which is the blunder that was made in California. I recall Kshama Sawant on a number of occasions saying, the collective bargaining issue is not about making drivers employees. It is about making them independent contractors who have rights. And that may sound, that may not sound important, but it is key to why we won these rights and why we will keep them. It is, whether she knew it or not, Kshama had the foresight to see what happened in California last year, where the same rights were won by drivers and then lost. So I guess what I admire in Kshama most is her vision. She is always 2 or 3 steps ahead of the game, and in our instance, she saw that. And we now, in Seattle, we have independent contractors who now have rights. The drivers have rights, and we are going to extend those rights to all workers in the gig economy. Kshama will be leading the way on that because she's going to win this. And what her detractors don't realize is that when she wins this, she is going to be stronger and more powerful than she was before. Solidarity, sister.
Thank you so much to the drivers union. I would add to what Don says. Not only, the organizing and the foresight were we able to win this solidarity for and these rights for workers here in in Washington, but in California, we saw that Uber was not afraid to spend $750 billion to defeat Prop 22, right? An unprecedented amount of money was poured into defeating Prop 22, which Don was referencing, right? Which was meant to give Uber drivers rights. And that amount of money is just a drop in the bucket for these people, right? And that's why I am proud to introduce our next speaker. Hannah Swoboda is the finance director of the Solidarity Campaign, because we know that it does take solidarity as a verb, and that means action, that means shifts, but that also means working class dollars. Please welcome Hannah Swoboda.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming out today. Woohoo! After all those excellent speeches, I'm sure we're really feeling fired up to go all out to defend Seattle's Socialist City Council member, Kshama Sawant. So I'm going to take a few minutes to motivate a key part of what that means. If we're going to defeat this recall attack, we're going to need absolutely record-breaking fundraising. Just like we needed in 2019 to re-elect Kshama in the face of intense corporate opposition. I know that many of you might have donated recently already, and I know that most of us are struggling economically under the weight of the pandemic and the recession. But it's the dire situation that we're in that makes it so important that we get organized and respond to this attack, not just on Kshama, but on all of our movements. It has always required sacrifice to win gains for working people. The whole of history of working class movements is one of pulling together our limited resources to build movements in order to win. And we've proven time and again through Kshama's office that we can do that. To defeat this recall, we need everyone digging deep to sacrifice what they can in order to win, whether it's a little or a lot. And now with the Supreme Court's decision, with the recall having the green light to collect signatures, it's go time. We just won a historic victory for renters' rights this week with the help of Kshama's office. We won the Amazon tax to fund affordable housing. We won a ban on police use of chemical weapons and a ban on winter evictions. But we stand to win so much more. We need rent control. We need community control of the police. We need a guaranteed jobs program for all who are unemployed or underemployed because of COVID. We need a socialist Green New Deal in Seattle to end fossil fuel emissions by 2030. Now the billionaires and the right wing, they want Kshama out of office because they sure as hell don't want any of those things. So in a minute, I'm going to start calling out some numbers. You might already have a number in your head that you're thinking of giving. I'd encourage you, think about what you can really donate, dig deep, make these sacrifices, because that's what it's going to take to win. So for those of you out here in person, we're also live streaming. If you're in person, if you hear a number that you can donate, raise your hand and keep it raised. Can I have the people who are taking donations raise your hands? Someone's going to come around. Basically, you're going to fill out an envelope. They'll give you all your instructions, but just fill it out legibly. You can take cash card. You can also take checks. Just note that there's a $60 limit for cash over the course of the whole campaign. And then for those of you tuning in online, we're going to drop a donation link in the chat. Let us know if you can make a donation. We'll just post that link in there for you guys to donate easily online. And then there's the option, you can make recurring donations on a monthly basis. If you'd like to donate a certain amount and you say, I really want to give $500, I can't do that today. You can break it up. It could be $100 over the course of 5 months. Just put it on the envelope, and then you can also do the monthly option on the website. And no matter if you're in person or online, let's hype each other up for every single donation. Every single effort that folks can make to build their movement is hugely important and necessary. So for all the reasons I just laid out, this is an absolutely critical moment. This brazen attempt to recall the nation's only Marxist elected official comes at a time of a brewing era of revolt. We just witnessed the Justice for George Floyd protest last year, the biggest protest movement in U.S. history. That movement spread to an international scale. In the face of issues like police brutality, the COVID crisis, austerity, governmental repression, protests have continued to ignite around the world. This recall has been allowed to go forward against all logic and fact because the ruling class is desperate to squash this energetic fight back before it takes root. It's critical that we keep Kshama in office if we want to keep our momentum and to continue building the struggle to reverse the race to the bottom where billionaires are making untold profits and working people are sinking deeper into debt and hardship. Many people have already made huge sacrifices and maxed out to the Kshama Solidarity campaign. Raise your hand if you've maxed out. That's awesome. Give her a round of applause. That's huge. Like I said before, keeping Kshama in office is going to require some big sacrifices. So I'm about to ask if anybody here else can max out their contribution to the Kshama Solidarity campaign at $1,000. I know for a lot of people, that's just not possible. But for some, maybe you can make that sacrifice. Maybe you could spare a portion of your recent stimulus check. So is there anyone here who can make the maximum contribution to the campaign today? That's $1,000 for an individual, $2,000 for a married couple. I see a hand back there. Give me a round of applause. All right. Do we have anyone who can match that? $1,000. Break it up. $500 over 2 months. I think there's another hand. I'm having a hard time keeping track of people. All right. Yeah. All right. Remember, cash check card. You can do whatever you want. Any last takers? Max out to the campaign. What's it going to take to win? All right. So this recall campaign is a political attack, plain and simple. It's an attack on democracy. We just re-elected Kshama, despite the historic attempts of the billionaires to buy the last election. But the billionaires, the right wing, they don't agree with this for free voters. They desperately want a do-over of the election. And that's why they've pushed forward this recall campaign with its totally illegitimate charges. These charges are a bald attempt to criminalize protest. Every single one of the charges that have been upheld are about movement building and struggle, making picket signs, phone banking, speaking at a protest. Those aren't crimes, but the powers that be sure wish they were. If they succeed in removing Kshama from office on this basis, the repercussions would go far beyond the struggle in Seattle. It would open the door for increased repression of our movements and set the tone that it doesn't matter what working class voters want because the rich and the powerful reserve the right to just overturn our elections. We can't let that happen. Is there anyone here who can donate $500 or more today to defeat the corporate elite's attempt at a do-over of the election? We got someone raising their hand up there. Give them a round of applause. Amazing. We got someone up there. All right, let's do it together. Hold tight, everyone. We only have so many clipboards circulating around, but just keep your hand up till someone comes around, give you the chance to make your donation. Can we get anyone else for 500 before I move on? So big business in the right wing cannot wait to get Kshama out of office. The recall campaign even sent a letter to the Supreme Court trying to pressure them to expedite their decision. They want her gone as soon as possible because every day that she's in office, she's using it as a platform to build struggle.
Right.
Our movement just won a huge victory for renters' rights with Kshama's Right to Counsel bill, which gives all tenants facing eviction the right to a lawyer. Victories like these are exactly why big business and the right wing want Kshama off of the city council. It's no coincidence that landlords and real estate executives who profit off of unjust evictions, they're some of the most frequent donors to the recall campaign. The wealthy elites don't want to cede any fraction of their profits to working people, no matter how small. They don't like that Kshama's using her office to build a fight for rent control and to cancel rent and mortgages for those who've lost income during the pandemic. But it's critical that we make banks and corporate landlords pay for the burden of this crisis, not renters, homeowners, or small landlords. So who here can give $200 or more today to ensure that we keep Kshama in office, fighting to address Seattle's massive housing crisis? I see a hand back there. We got one up front. All right. Keep those hands up high. We got another one there. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody. We got another one back there. So what about $100? Can anyone here give $100 to continue the fight for rent control and affordable housing? Got some folks? All right, we got someone up front. Fantastic. Lots of people. I'll give our donation collectors a moment to circulate around. Fantastic. So the recall campaign, they like to paint themselves as grassroots. In reality, it's got the support of some of the richest people in Seattle and beyond.
Yeah.
They've been supported by the rich Trump donor ICE landlord Martin Selig, Jeannie Nordstrom of the union-busting Nordstrom family, and Eric Mendelson, who owns a nursing home real estate company in Tennessee, which is part of a for-profit nursing home system that is responsible for thousands of COVID deaths. Yep. They're throwing around their billionaire money to buy things like billboard space. After removing their giant Recall Sawant billboard for a little while, the recall campaign has put it back up. Just blocks away from Kshama's house. I know. I think it's crystal clear that they're not concerned about their funding drying up.
No.
They know, and we know, that they can rely on corporate PAC funding. That's why we'll never outspend the billionaires. But we can defeat them by building a movement, just like we did when we re-elected Kshama in 2019, despite unprecedented corporate spending to try to buy the election. Our movements can stand toe-to-toe with the billionaires because they're made up of thousands of working people doing what we can. We outnumber the rich and powerful.
Yeah!
When we get organized, we can overcome the PAC money, the corporate media tax, the paid canvassers, and the misinformation. But it's going to take every single person here getting active. So who here can donate $50 or more today to the Kshama Solidarity Campaign to help build a movement that can take on the billionaire class? All right, we got someone there, we got some hands, more hands. Perfect, fantastic. Keep them high. All right, so I'm going to call out one last number. Since we first elected her, Kshama has used her office as an organizing tool, putting forward a movement-building strategy to win concrete gains for working people. It was this socialist strategy that allowed us to win the $15 minimum wage in Seattle just after electing Kshama.
Yeah.
And that's why the ruling class so desperately wants to remove her from office. They want to take away our most effective leader in the fight for what working people need. They want to roll back our victories. They're already talking about doing that with the Amazon tax. We need to keep Kshama in office and continue forward with a fighting, movement-building strategy. So who here can donate $15 or more for the socialists who helped to win 15? Got a hand in the back. Got some more hands. Fantastic. Give them a round of applause. Every single donation helps. We actually want to get to 5,000 individual donors next. Even if you can't do 15, can you pitch in whatever you can spare? Raise your hand if you can donate any amount. All right, we got some extra hands. Fantastic. All right. Again, let's give a big round of applause to everyone here who donated, everyone who turned out. This is a fantastic event. This is the sort of energy it's going to need to take to power this movement and win this fight. Thank you. Solidarity.
When workers' rights are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
When Black lives are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
When Indigenous lives are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
When queer lives are under attack, what do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
What do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
What do we do?
Stand up, fight back.
Next up, we have the Seattle City Council member representing the 3rd District, Ashby, rank and file union member and member of Socialist Alternative, Kshama Sawant.
We love you, Kshama.
I love you too. This ruling is completely unjust, but we are not surprised. Working people in oppressed communities know that we cannot rely on the capitalist courts for justice any more than we can on the police. Many working people saw this firsthand last summer in Seattle and across the country as peaceful protests against racist police brutality were themselves met with brutal police violence. The police and the political establishment have yet to be held accountable, while in stark contrast, more than 14,000 protesters were arrested. I was one of the protesters, of course, and it is no accident that 2 of the 3 charges upheld by the state Supreme Court are about my participation in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. In October, the Washington State Supreme Court unanimously threw out the grassroots recall of Amazon's mayor, Democrat Jenny Durkin, who oversaw the vicious police crackdown against Seattle protesters. Among other dangerous weapons, Seattle police under Durkin used tear gas during a respiratory pandemic. Tear gas inflames the lungs, burns the skin, and stings the eyes. Its use has the potential to increase the spread of the coronavirus and to cause long-term harm in individuals with asthma and other respiratory conditions. Democratic administrations like Durkin's continued unleashing tear gas for weeks, despite repeated public pleas by medical and public health professionals to stop its use, especially during COVID. Yet, the Supreme Court unanimously ruled that the recall's objection to Durkin's use of tear gas really represents a quote-unquote political disagreement with Durkin and therefore did not have merit and summarily dismissed the case. Now, this same Supreme Court has unanimously approved the recall against Seattle's only socialist because we held a masked 1-hour Black Lives Matter rally in an empty city hall. The Supreme Court's real reason for siding with the recall is highly political. It is an attack on our office for unambiguously standing with the Black Lives Matter movement.
That's right.
The stunning irony is that I was one of the thousands who was tear gassed by Durgan's police. The Supreme Court has thrown out a whole series of recall cases for establishment politicians, including the COVID safety denying sheriff of Thurston County, John Snaza. Sheriff Snaza refused to require his police officers to wear masks in the midst of this historic pandemic, putting ordinary people in even greater danger than usual at the hands of the police. The hypocrisy is on every level breathtaking. This recall ruling against our Socialist Council office could not be more political because it's a blatant attack on working people and on the right to protest. This ruling criminalizes protest and sets an extremely dangerous precedent. The third charge, of course, was about my support for the Tax Amazon movement. This charge is beyond farcical. I am accused of spending public resources on the issue of taxing Amazon and big business because months later it became a possible ballot initiative issue. In other words, I am accused of using public resources on a non-existing ballot initiative and ultimately an initiative that never went on the ballot. This is another dangerous precedent. How can working class elected representatives use their office to organize on progressive issues? Any progressive issue may sometime in the future result in a ballot initiative.
That's right.
We cannot make sense of this twisted logic without recognizing that the real intent of such ludicrous charges is to have a chilling effect. If working people and movements dare to have our own elected positions that organize for our interests, the ruling class will ruthlessly retaliate. It is appropriate that the ruling came out on April Fool's Day because it is appropriate this ruling came out on April Fool's Day because the ruling makes a mockery of any kind of justice. But of course, under capitalism, the idea of fair treatment under the law for working people, people of color, women, and the poor has always been a cruel joke. I have talked to many ordinary people during these past months who did not want to believe that the state Supreme Court could be capable of such an unjust decision. But like every institution under capitalism, the court's fundamental purpose is to serve the interests of those with wealth and power against those who have little or none. Washington State's recall law is itself both profoundly undemocratic and unequally applied. It is well suited for retaliation against working people's representatives, in part because there is no requirement that the charges be even proven true. And I will never be provided an opportunity to defend myself in court against these falsehoods. The truth is not relevant, we are told. This gives Washington courts enormous leeway to use recall elections as a mechanism to defend the ruling class and capitalist system, greenlighting cases against the left while dismissing charges against establishment politicians. It is no accident that Seattle's last elected socialist, Anna Louise Strong, was driven out of office in 1919 by a recall campaign for her links to the labor movement and opposition to World War I. The laws under capitalism are written by and for the elite, not for us. The genocide of native peoples and the theft of their land was legally sanctioned. The bloody institution of American slavery was once the law of the land, as was Jim Crow segregation. The lynchings that enforced segregation were not technically legal, yet no court in the country would convict the lynchers. In what is now Washington State, the Coast Salish people were granted fishing and hunting rights to motivate the treaties they signed virtually at gunpoint, which were then subsequently and wholesale denied. Often, they were rejected by the legal mechanism that they could not get fishing rights without citizenship, but then they were also denied citizenship rights in the land they had lived on for millennia. During the civil rights era, those who fought for black freedom were jailed again and again, while KKK leaders, killer cops, and the agents of the state who murdered the Black Panthers walked free. State violence against and brutal killings of union organizers and socialists was once commonplace. None of this is distant history. This is American capitalism. Today in Seattle, big business and the right wing are furious about the impact of socialist politics and social movements. They especially hate the inspiring example we have set for working people around the nation. After having failed at their attempt to steal the city council election in 2019, billionaires want a do-over and want to reverse the historic victories spearheaded by our office. The Amazon tax to fund social housing and Green New Deal projects, the $15 minimum wage, the first in the nation ban on weapons against police protests, the landmark renters' rights like the ban on winter evictions, and our victory just this past Monday for all tenants facing eviction to have the right to a lawyer. There is another election Amazon and Jeff Bezos are trying to steal. The union election by warehouse workers in Bessemer, Alabama. Because if the courageous efforts in Alabama are successful, it could lead to a major organizing drive at Amazon warehouses and other workplaces around the country. Members of my organization, Socialist Alternative, are in Alabama as we speak to do everything we can to support the union drive. The recall campaign is deeply undemocratic in every respect. The recall campaign manager said just yesterday that they did not want a general election vote because of the high turnout levels. Their preference is for a low turnout special election dominated by wealthy voters, and they make no bones about it. Our socialist office has won unheard of victories for working people, and most importantly, we have built movements and empowered working people and marginalized communities, helping to lay the groundwork for future movements. We have been elected 3 times, despite the corporate cash and the corporate lies. So now, they have launched one of the most serious attacks on the US left in decades. But this is the capitalist system, and it's precisely because the ruling class so determinedly wants me off city council that I know our office has fought for working people whose interests are opposed to the greed of the rich. The recall is a sign that the ruling class is deeply fearful of the growth of peaceful protest and workplace actions that are coming as the crisis of capitalism escalates. We're fighting right here in Seattle for just cause protections for all renters, no evictions for families with school-aged children and educators during school year. We're fighting for standardized lease terms to stop credit checks for renters. We're stepping up our fight for rent control, to cancel COVID debt, including all rental and mortgage debt. Make the big banks and the corporate landlords pay for this crisis, not working people. And we're fighting for a socialist Green New Deal with a guaranteed union jobs program paid for by expanding the Amazon tax. In order to be successful, we have to be clear who is on our side and who is not. We cannot have illusions in the bosses or in their political servants. We cannot afford to naively believe that we can have peace with pro-corporate politicians in either party, or that we can convince Democratic Party politicians with reasonable arguments. It was no accident that after our movement won overwhelming support for the $15 minimum wage and made it impossible for the Democratic establishment in the city to ignore us, it was after that that Seattle Mayor Democrat Ed Murray convened a committee that was half full of business representatives to try and water it down to $11 or $12 with all kinds of loopholes. We won only because of our 15 Now movement. It was no accident that last year, after our Tax Amazon movement built unstoppable momentum, progressive Democrats signed on to a big business-backed plan called the Third Door Coalition, and then after they were forced to concede the Amazon tax victory, they thanked business representatives, not the Tax Amazon movement. We cannot afford to underestimate the dedication with which these quote-unquote progressive Democrats will serve the interests of the ruling class. Events have proven how it will not be enough to tweet support for issues like 15, or criticize Republicans, or symbolically introduce progressive legislation like Medicare for all. This is not going to get it done. In Congress, it is not just about introducing a bill. We will need a serious strategy to actually win it, based on mobilizing millions of working people and union members and being prepared to go up against the Democratic Party leadership. We will have to clarify, for example, that the reason the squad Congress members accepted removing the federal $15 minimum wage from the stimulus bill is not because they are carrying out some grandmaster chess strategy that we just don't get, but because they are reluctant to clash with Biden and Pelosi. Many progressive politicians want working people to believe that change can happen in some harmonious way. This is simply not possible, and it is a pathway to capitulation. In fact, if you are not facing ferocious opposition from the establishment during your term in office, and if your re-election is a cakewalk, it's a sign you're failing working people because the ruling class does not see you as a threat. The great Irish socialist James Connolly once said, "The role of a socialist in elected office is to be a disturber of the political peace." This is not because as socialists we personally love conflict. It is because the whole machinery of capitalism is designed to crush workers, and there is no way to stand against that while being part of the club. This is also why we urgently need a new party for working people and the oppressed. Rather than the futile task of trying to quote-unquote organize pro-capitalist Democrats, as some are now suggesting, we must instead organize a grassroots force alongside other socialists and working class representatives to lay the groundwork for future class struggle. Bessemer workers also hear about, why can't we all just get along, and how Amazon is one big happy family. Workers are told the union is disrupting the peace and they really just want your dues money. We have to fight unambiguously against these reactionary, dishonest ideas everywhere we find them. And we need to go further. We not only need unions at every Amazon workplace, we need to take these workplaces into democratic public ownership by workers. In our fights for workers' rights, we need to always have at the forefront that this system was not made for us, that we need an alternative to this brutal, racist, sexist system of capitalism. A system that right now, in the richest country in the world, has Amazon workers under surveillance and forced to urinate in bottles. We need a fundamentally different kind of society. We need to fight for a society based on solidarity, equality, and sustainability. We need to fight for a socialist world. Solidarity.
We fight! When we fight! When we fight! And are we gonna fight? Thank you so much for coming out today and standing with us. I have two last requests. If you raise your hand during the financial appeal and you have not yet spoken to one of our organizers, please make sure to raise your hand so someone can approach you or approach the merch table where they can take care of you. We just want to make sure that we, cross our T's and dot our I's. Yep. And then finally, many of us are going out into